Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the international best-selling book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And our guest today is actually a listener of the show who found me and wrote me on Facebook with a story to share about her husband, her daughters, her life, and her loss, and where she is today. So coming to us from Hawaii is the beautiful Courtney Horn. Courtney, welcome to We Don't Die Radio.
Aloha.
Aloha! Where are you in Hawaii?
I'm on the Big Island.
On the Big
in
Island.
Waimea.
I have not been there. Been to Hawaii, to Maui.
We call it God's country.
Oh, it must be. I've seen pictures and movies.
Yeah.
Always been there?
Yep. We're born and raised here.
Oh, very nice. I have to confess, I've got a little bit of a cold, so every so often I might mute to cough, and I got a cup of tea here, but if I go quiet, just know I'm coughing. But I'll be right back, so no worries there.
Okay.
But Courtney, where does your story begin? That I know you've been through a lot, and you say it's a long story, but we've got all the time in the world. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your family and what happened?
So my family and I, we felt like we were at the top of the world. My husband and I have been together for over 20 years. 3 beautiful daughters. Our oldest one is heading off to college from Hawaii to New Mexico. And this child was amazing. She was so smart and beautiful and had the whole world in the palm of her hands. And when we took her off to college last year in August, I felt like my world ended. And I prepared myself. I read every book. I talked to other parents that had sent their kids off. I had my list ready and I checked it and everything. But when I physically left her there, I felt like someone died. And I actually told everyone I spoke to, I said, I don't think it's supposed to feel like this. I feel like she's going to be gone forever. And I know she's just over the ocean. So I had this incredible feeling on me the entire time that she had to call me and check in every day. And she would get so upset. Mom, why do I have to call you every day? My friends never have to check in. But I told her, if something ever happened to you, I need to know where you're at. And so she did. Every single day of her entire life, I spoke to her. Every day in college, she called. And in February, she called me on the 12th. And she said, Mom, I don't like college. I'm ready to come home. And I told her, honey, just say the word. I'll book your ticket. And 2 days later, she was gone forever, and, in the physical world. On February 15th, I didn't hear from her. I spoke to her on the 14th. On the 15th, I didn't hear from her. But I had this amazing sense that someone was there with me. I could feel an energy with me. I knew she was gone before anyone else did. I called the school and I told them to look for her. And this school told me, she's 18, we can't force her to call. And I told them something is really wrong with my daughter. And if she was able to call, she would have called me by now. At that time, they connected me to the police and they told me that they would check her dorm, but they couldn't force her to call me. So I told them I would wait for their call back. I went outside and I hugged my husband and I told him, I said, babe, something is really wrong with Caleb. You need to stay home with me today. And at that exact moment, the police called and told me that she had passed away. She had committed suicide inside of her dorm room.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was, I don't know how I knew. A lot of people tell me it's that connection between a mother and a child.
Mm-hmm.
But I truly believe, after listening to all of your podcasts and reading all of the books and everything, that my spirit knew that she was going to stay there. It was devastation. Like, it truly was. When I left her, it felt like the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I cried the exact same way when the police called me and told me she was gone.
Wow.
But since then, she's given me amazing signs time and time again. From the very first night, I woke up early in the morning and to someone slamming my door and yelling, "Mom!" And I was so tired. You don't sleep that first night. You're so exhausted. I just yelled, "What?" And I looked up and there was no one there. So I'm running around my house. One of my girls was sleeping. The other one was at the grocery store. No one could have called my name. I had teachers, random people, but her teacher contacted me the day after she passed, saying that she had a dream that my daughter had died prior to even knowing for sure that she was gone.
Interesting.
A lady I never met. Yeah, a lady I never met
Mm-hmm.
before. Constantly for years prior, I would see the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, to the point where I thought it was my lucky number. So I went to Vegas several times to play those numbers. Yeah, I thought I was going to get lucky.
Sure.
But since her passing, still continuously see it, but it's always at moments when I need it the most. For instance, when the mortuary picked up her body, they called me and it was 12:34.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I guess, that extra comfort
Yes.
that's still around, that we don't die, and we had her sent over from New Mexico, and the outpouring from our community and our friends and our loved ones, carried us in the most immense way. But also, 3 days after she passed, someone sent us to see a healer. He said it might help us, and I didn't know what we were going to expect. And we could feel the energy. And since her passing, I can feel energy for some reason. And she was there and gave us a lot of answers to the questions that we had because of suicide. Because this kid was so happy. I mean, she truly was an amazing girl.
Do you mind if I ask what kind of answers? Because I know there's a lot of listeners of this show who have lost children to suicide.
Yeah.
And if there's anything you feel appropriate that you can share.
For instance, she wanted to go back to her body. She didn't know she was gone. She was asked, so soon as 3 days after, but she was asking if she could please go back to her body. And of course, we know that that's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
She told us the circumstances around the suicide. It was heartbreak. And here on the island, our family bases are more of a long-term thing. It's not like my husband and I have been together 20 years. His brother, is 18, 15. We're all together long-term.
Mm-hmm.
And so my child has only seen happily ever after. And so when she met this boy, she thought that's the one. She never knew anger. And that's why we were totally blindsided. She and I only got into maybe 3 or 4 fights her entire life. And it was a total surprise, because researching suicide and stuff after the fact, you always look for signs, or you beat yourself up on what you missed. And with her, it was a spontaneous decision that she regretted. But also, she told us that she was beautiful and she was glowing, and all of those ideas that if you commit suicide, you're stuck, or you're not accepted, or you're not, all of those ideas went right out the window. This child was still full of light, and truly comforted us. So one thing that she did do that really stood out was she gave everyone gifts. I didn't get one, but but she gave everyone that was there. My husband, my sister, my best friend, gave them gifts. And my husband, she came up to him and she gave him ha, which in Hawaii is the breath of life. And when she went up to him, you can't physically see her, but we could physically see him. And when she went up to him and gave her her breath, he literally like almost lifted off the ground. His body just lifted, and you could see him taking it in. And it's so important, in the later part of our journey. Mm. So we've had constant communication with her, not just feelings, but, songs. For some reason, the song Don't Cry For Me, Argentina, kept playing in my head, which, a really weird one. But when you listen to the lyrics, it was exactly like my child, and it really helped me heal. She just passed this past February.
Not long at all.
Yeah.
Not long at all.
We got lots of feathers.
I can't help but think just the relationship you had as a family and having so much love. One thing I talk about when I talk about grief is, it's not just the death of a loved one. It can be a relationship. And I know of it. I can just imagine that to never know like the possibility of that and being so in love, which I'm guessing she was with this boy, and then to have that end, that was intense grief for her. And, grief has you not thinking straight. I mean, we lose a whole bunch of our brain chemistry and it's like our world gets turned upside down. So I can get it that that's what she was going through. And then also it's very comforting because it's always a fear there's this, so much has been said in the past that suicide is wrong and bad, and people worry about what happens to their loved ones. And I have interviewed a ton of people and talked to many more, and read so much that those who take their own lives just they just deserve compassion, and they're greeted by loving arms. They're surrounded by love. They're not made wrong, all of that. So I really appreciate you saying those things about your daughter.
Yeah, and she was 18. And so at that point in your life, your brain is not fully developed either.
Correct.
And you don't have that emotional capacity or life skills and knowledge to learn how to deal with certain things. And that's why, we have these bumps in the road so that we can learn from it. And you take direction from it, and they're incapable, physically incapable of dealing with it at some times in their lives.
Yes.
And then we beat ourselves up because we were, maybe if we let her have boyfriends in high school, maybe if we did this, maybe if we did that. But that's what suicide does. Suicide does that to us and takes us on that journey. And she was there so instantly that it comforted us throughout the process.
Yeah, it had to, especially getting signs. And it's interesting because to a skeptical mind, they might say, oh, a feather or a coin, might just be a coincidence. But it's those subtle things, and it's you're still being able to communicate with your daughter and ask for signs and things happening. So would you tell us some of the other signs? Tell us about the feathers.
Yeah. And so with the feathers, it's so funny because my best friend got a feather, and everybody told us, watch for those. We're like, it's not that significant. But she had a beautiful feather, and it was gray and white. It was chevron. Texted it to me, and she sent me a picture. And I was like, wow, that's really nice. But I don't know if that's from Caleb. It's just a feather. At the same time, I had a friend visiting me, and she had also lost her son to suicide. And I was telling her about the signs that we got. And I said, everyone that loves her has gotten something. And she was like, well, I'm not sure. My son gave me some, but not a lot. She left that day, and she felt, comforted by our meeting. But immediately the next morning, she took her kids to school and her car was shut up. There was no windows open, no doors, nothing. She walked the kids to class and she came back into her car and there was a matching feather to my friend's feather sitting on top of her chair.
Oh, wow.
And this, yeah, and this lady like messaged me and totally documented, drove all the way up to my house holding that feather in her hand. You know, and it wasn't just comforting for me, it was comforting to her. She had lost her son.
Yes.
With Caleb, she had to have beautiful eyelashes, those silly fake eyelashes that you glue on your face.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone told me when we do her viewing, you have to have her eyelashes. So I was like, okay, I guess we'll do that. My best friend and I went to Walmart and we could find the eyelashes, but we couldn't find the glue anywhere.
Okay.
So I asked the lady and she was like, go to Target, you can pick it up there. I said, well, you don't have time. We grabbed nail glue, which is super glue.
Mm-hmm.
And her face was horrified. She was like, you cannot put that on your face. She doesn't know we're putting it on a body. And so my friend was like, Court, I'm not telling anyone if you don't want to tell anyone. And I was like, I'm telling everyone. This is pretty funny. So we put it on her. She looked absolutely gorgeous. I mean, like perfect angel. And 1 month later, I went to service my car. They dropped me off at Target. As I was loading up the cart, I saw something stuck under the child's seat, pulled it out, and it was her eyelash glue. Mm-hmm. The exact brand. That was her favorite brand. I don't know how, those things happen. And I had so many friends trying to tell me, right?
Yeah.
So many people tell me, Court, it's just a sign from her. And I was a skeptic. You needed to punch me in my eye for me to believe.
Yes.
In January, I had spoken to her on the phone. I was cleaning out her room, and I found one of her name tags from work. And I called her, and I was like, babe, I have your name tag. Would you like me to return it to work? And she was like, no, the one I made has my name on it. And I was like, okay. And she said, I've been looking for it for 6 months. You probably won't find it, Mom, but if you find it, return it. And I was like, okay. A week after she passed away, my husband jumped out of bed, and it was right on the floor. He stepped on it. He came to me, he gave it to me, and I was like, babe, where did you find that? And he was like, it was right next to our bed. How did you not see it? And I was like, Caleb spent 6 months looking for that thing. And it was right there in clear view, right under his foot.
Amazing. Amazing. She found it and put it there.
Yeah, I don't know where she found it. I cleaned her whole room. We took out everything.
Well, I think we're a little bit more powerful when we cross over than here.
My most favorite story is one night my husband and I went over to another town, and we were dropping off my uncle. And my husband has been so distraught, so heartbroken.
Of course.
And I just wanted to comfort him. And so as we're driving, I told him, Caleb is going to send us a sign tonight. And he was like, what? And I said, she's going to send us an owl. And he was like, you don't know that, but I can feel her energy. And I don't know why I even said it. But I told him she's going to send us an owl. So we're driving along the road, 15 minutes. We see the owl out in the distance. And it flew back and forth, then looked at us directly in our eyes and flew right over the car.
How often does that happen? Never.
Never. Like, you'll see an owl once in a great while, but never just look at you, fly right at you.
And not right after you had said that.
Yeah, after I called it. But I told him, I was like, I told you she was going to give us a sign. And he was like, how did you know? And I could feel her. And it was such a huge moment for the two of us. We were in tears and really connected with each other. A week later, my husband took a vacation to see his friend in California. And after I dropped him off at the airport, I'm driving home with my other two kids. And I told the girls, Caleb's going to send us an owl tonight. And they're like, Mom, you're crazy. You just saw one last week. You're not going to see another owl. And we're driving up the road, and sitting right in the center of the road was an owl. Flew right up over the windshield. It was 11 o'clock at night. I started screaming because I didn't want to hit the thing. And they were a little upset with me. You called it, but you just gave us a heart attack with your screaming. So I called my best friend and I was telling her I was so excited. And as I was talking to her, she started to scream on the phone. She's on the other side of the island. And I was like, what happened? And she's like, Court, the most beautiful owl flew over my car. I was like, that's so crazy. I was like,
She
you
said
watch
that to
tonight?
you. So she
Yes.
got the owl too. Okay.
Yep. I told her, you watch. By the end of tonight, I'm going to see another owl. And she's like, you're being greedy. You're not going to see another owl. I said, you watch, I will. I drove all the way home and I didn't see the owl. I was so bummed. But when I got home, I live right in the center of town and there's all these streetlights. An owl would never be there. An owl flew from my house to the neighbor's house.
I love
right
that
over us.
you have such a strong connection to your daughter that you're getting these messages. You haven't yet heard this episode, but by the time I air yours, this other one will be aired. But I interviewed a woman, and it was talking about connecting to those people that we've loved, and it's just reminding me of this conversation that when you have this heart connection, such a strong love, that it just really opens up the communication. But you need to have the quiet mind and the trust to get the messages in.
Yeah, and I don't know where that came from because I was so heartbroken. But I think it's because I have such amazing friends and amazing family.
Yeah, and
that I was
love
able
never
to.
dies. Love never
It
dies.
never dies.
Never.
And that's my favorite saying.
Is
My
it?
favorite saying is that, yeah, it's that this has been the most devastating experience of my entire
Of
life.
course.
But it's been the most amazing experience. It's taught me that love lives past death.
Wow. And even by you wanting to come on this show, it's you're able to pass on hope and things that are possible, and just knowing that like this is real.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gift for other
And
people to hear.
the only reason I was open to contacting you is because I've been getting all these signs that
Sure.
I had a random person come up to me in the bathroom at church and tell me, you have to share your story. She doesn't even know my story. And
Oh,
she said,
really?
you have to share your story. Yeah. And I mean, all the time. And so now I've learned to just stop and listen,
Mm-hmm.
absorb those signs and take it and run with it.
Yeah, because they can come from strangers. You just have to be open and pay attention.
Yes. And I've had complete strangers contact me with messages from my daughter. Sometimes
Really?
to the point where, where I've been a wreck. Like, I'm like, it hits me so hard that you know that it's true. Or when they contact me, I can feel like, okay, she visited this person before they even tell me their story.
Wow.
It's really amazing.
How do they visit the other people? How does she visit the other people?
One lady called me one day, and when my daughter was little, she's such a sweetheart. We had an older lady coming up and down the road with her wheelchair, but she didn't have upper body strength, so she used her legs to push herself. And so my kids would push her home. We haven't seen her in 10 years. And she contacted me and told me, Caleb has been coming to me at night and she has messages for you. And I was like, what? Like, this is a stranger. And she was like, she really wanted you to know that things are going to be okay, and to feel the warmth of her embrace. And so on the day before Mother's Day, I had my first real visitation from her, dream. And I dreamt that she was at the end of my driveway and she had her arms wide open. And she, when it's a real visitation, right, they say you remember everything.
Mm-hmm.
She had her arms wide open and she's like, Mom, I'm home. And I wanted that hug so badly. And I woke up in tears because I thought I didn't get that hug. And when I went on Facebook, that lady had posted on top of my Facebook page at the exact time. And she wrote, "Do you feel the warmth of her embrace? Heavenly Father is always near."
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that has really struck me, is that all of my encounters with her has been documented. So I can screenshot that picture. I have text messages. I have pictures. And that, for me, being a skeptic, that was like, Mom, you need to start listening. You need to understand that I'm still here. We don't die.
What is the picture that you sent me with her eyes on another lady's body?
So on August 20th, my husband was consumed and he hung himself.
Oh.
And something told me to go look for him. I was actually laying down to take a nap, and it was 4:30. And for some reason, I got up and something told me to look for him. So I went looking for him. I couldn't find him. We have a shed in the backyard, and I was calling for him. The door was locked. So I got my kids. I asked them if he left. Where was he at? They said he was still home, but he wasn't answering. Something convinced me to continue to look for him. It took me 20 minutes. I had to break in through a window, and I got into the shed, and he was dead. He was gray. He was cold. It was like the end of my world all over again.
Of course.
I tried to lift him. I tried to untie him. I couldn't get him down. I swear I saw my daughter there with him. But I thought it was my mind and my heart playing tricks on me. There's no physical way. But she was there. And something gave me the strength. I mean, he was gone. There was no pulse. Something gave me the strength to run into the house and get a knife and cut him down. And then I gave him CPR and I brought him back. The doctors told us that my husband was brain dead. He was documented in the emergency room as brain dead and asked me to donate his organs.
Oh my gosh.
But I believe. And after everything, going through everything with Caleb, even more I believed. At that exact moment when he went into the hospital, there was a fire rainbow in the sky. And I've researched it after the fact, and a fire rainbow is something people only see once or twice in their lifetime. It's a vertical rainbow, vibrant colors through the sky. But there wasn't just one, there was two. And one of my friends had called me outside the emergency room and showed it to me and took pictures. The ICU nurses that worked on him took pictures. Something told them that day to take pictures. And we waited. They wound up freezing his body in the morning at 5:30 in the morning, which is like 13 hours later. The doctor came and talked to me, and he told me there's no hope. His pupils are pinpoint and non-reactive. He is brain dead, and that we needed to make a decision. His best friend called me, and this guy was a wreck. And he told me, "Court, I have to tell you, Napo is going to be okay." And I was like, "What?" He said, "I dreamt about him, and he was totally fine. And he said he just had to visit Caleb. He just went to visit her, and he'll be back. He's going to be totally fine." And I told him, "The doctor just told me there's no hope." This guy is in California. Mm-hmm. "There's no hope. We have to make a decision. I'm gathering the family." Half an hour later, solar eclipse happens, and my husband wakes up and looks at every single person in the eye in the room. I was on his body. I'm not a religious person. I was on his body. Hallelujah. Thank you, God. Thank you, Caleb. Thank you for bringing him back to me. I didn't even know what he was going to be like at that point. He was on life support for 4 days, and he has made 150% recovery. We were released from the hospital Yep, 11 days after the incident.
Wow.
They told me,
Incredible.
yeah, they
That's a
told me that we
miracle.
needed to be absolute miracle. The doctor said that there is no medical reason at all. But they told me that we had to be medevaced. And so we were sent on this tiny little airplane, a 6-year airplane over the ocean to another island. And I was so scared. Sandra, I was terrified. I told them they need to give me medicine. They need to knock me out.
Hmm.
When we walked up to the airplane, there was an owl on the airplane.
Oh,
I went to sleep before I even took off. I was so cold. I felt so comforted.
sure.
He has no memory of the entire
None.
week, nothing at all, except for the fact that he saw my daughter. He saw himself hanging, and he saw my daughter holding him up with tears in her eyes. He didn't even know that I thought I saw her. Yeah, I mean, constantly proving herself
Hmm.
that she's still around.
And thank goodness he doesn't have the memory of all of that. Unfortunately, you do, but you also have a great deal of hope and good signs and things. And also
Yeah,
for
I mean,
being a
and
father going through that, you can't imagine. Or I can't, I mean, I can't imagine because I don't have children, but the pain of losing a child, oh,
I truly believe, everyone tells you, especially when you lose any loved one, oh, there's a purpose, there's a reason, and you get so angry
of
because
course.
that's my child. I don't want a reason. I want her here.
Yes.
And I truly believe that, he was probably going down the wrong road for a while, and maybe her purpose was to help save him, help change this and turn it around. Maybe her spirit knew her life was going to be short when she chose us.
Very possible. Very possible. We can
So
wear,
to back,
oh,
yeah,
no, it's interesting. You can either wear the hat of being a victim or you can put the hat on of seeing a spiritual perspective. Like, is there a reason or what have we learned or how is my soul
hmm
growing? But again, it's very difficult, especially when you're the grieving parent. But when we take that other road of looking for that spiritual perspective, sometimes that does bring comfort and answers.
yeah.
So back to your
And like
story. Go ahead.
to back that up, we actually found essays that she wrote when she was in the 7th grade about how she's the wind, and how she's going to encompass us and she's always going to be around. And amazing essays for a 12-year-old to write, that gave me indication that her spirit or her soul probably knew that, and that's what the mediums had told us um, time and time again, is that her spirit knew her life was going to be short. But I asked for a sign. I asked God, can you, or whoever, can you give me a sign that she's okay? And I've taken pictures of the sky, and there's faces in the sky, and I mean, so comforting. Or I'll find an essay that she wrote. Here we're asking why she chose New Mexico. Why did this happen? Did she miss us? We found all of her essays in a file that I was going to delete, on a day that I needed it the most.
Mm-hmm.
It just showed up, these little gifts.
Yeah. How is your husband doing now?
He is 150% better. He would, like I said, on life support for 4 days. He wound up with full-blown pneumonia, released from the hospital 11 days later. And the only thing that was wrong with him was he had a gout attack. He had a sore elbow, and that was it. He's
Wow.
running around, went back to work the day after we came home, fully
Really?
functional. Yeah, remembers everything back to like 5 years old.
Really?
Yep. which I'm so grateful because he's the keeper of all of my memories. I have horrible memory.
Yeah, I do
Since
too.
we've been together for so long. Yeah, he remembers everything.
But not around the time of the
Not that week.
incident.
When I told him, initially I didn't want to tell him what he had done unless I had the correct doctors around. And so initially I told him he had pneumonia because he woke up and he was
Like, what happened?
with tubes on his throat and everything. Yeah, and that was his thing. What happened? And he was freaking out. So I told him he had pneumonia. And when we went to the other hospital on the other island, I finally told him, and he got really upset. He was like, I would never do that to myself. I love my life. I have so much to live for. I love you guys. I would never do this. And, very similar to my daughter, it was a spontaneous decision, in a moment, of grief. And a lot of people need to understand that with suicide, it's not always like a full-on depression with signs and messages or any of that. Sometimes we're human. We're human, and the emotions get the best of us.
I don't know if you've heard my grief audio, but I talk about how to survive grief. I talk about when we're grieving, we lose a lot of our healthy brain chemicals,
Mm-hmm.
and our we can lose parts of our memory, and
Mm-hmm.
we can behave really erratically. And it's like, like our car needs all kinds of oils and transmission fluid and power steering fluid and all these kind of things to run. Well, these neurotransmitters that go through our humanity, our bodies, they're the things that keep us going. But when we're grieving, when we have such devastating loss, we can lose a whole bunch of them. And so we're not behaving rationally, and we don't even know it. So
Yeah.
grief is nothing. So many people are like, oh, well, he's taken a month off from work because his wife died. He should be back by now. People have no idea really what grief is about. A lot of people don't, and how long it can really take to get your chemistry back normal. So I can get it.
And I had lost my father, and so I had gone through the grief, but it's so different. When it's your own child or it's your own partner, everybody
Yes.
grieves so differently, and the circumstances is so different for every single person. And people don't understand that sometimes.
Yeah. I don't think you can really compare how bad the pain is,
Mm-hmm.
because it's all bad, but I can imagine, and that a spouse, or even more so, your flesh and blood, your child, um, devastating. So all I
And
have
even
is
when it's your parents,
compassion. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I know that from my father. I can't
yeah,
imagine a pain worse than that. I can't.
yeah.
Can't. And
Yeah, because, when you really think about it, they are a part of us. We are a part of them,
correct.
And my uncle just told me this the other night, and he said, you have to remember, she's half you. You are tied to her
Yeah.
forever because she's made of you. And same like us of our fathers. We're made of our fathers. We're always going to be tied to them. And that, it's so important for people to remember, it's just because they're not physically here, there's still so much more that we don't know.
Mm-hmm. And we're all made up of energy. Every human body
Yeah.
is made up of energy. And energy is proven. It does not die. It does not disappear.
Mm-hmm.
It continues to exist. We cannot get rid of energy. Wow.
Yeah. It's so amazing. So we decided to go back to church, and we hadn't gone to church. We weren't faithful in going to church, and especially going back to our home church, because that's where they had our funeral. So it's really difficult for us to commit to that.
I would imagine.
But family and friends, kept asking us, please go. Let's try and help my husband out. And so we decided to try out a Christian church here in town. And prior to going, I told my husband, babe, when you go to church, the preacher is going to say something that's going to hit you in your heart. That's what I hear happens. I never experienced it myself, but I told him that's what I hear happens. And so we go to a church, brand new church. We've never been in there. We don't know the priest. And the priest starts talking about suicide. And it hit me in my heart. And I'm standing there crying. And I was like, oh, I told him this was going to happen. I should have prepared myself, not just him. And I was there bawling. And Sandra, the priest, started to say, there's a family here in our town, lost their daughter to suicide in February. And last month, the wife came home and found her husband hanging. Thank God she got him to the hospital in time.
Oh
I dropped
my
my jaw.
gosh.
Right? I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, how did that just happen? And my husband was like, babe, I think you need to go talk to the priest. And I was like, yeah, I think so. So I went up to him and I was like, Kahu, I was like, I just wanted to let you know I'm that wife you were talking about in your sermon. And he was like, the wife? And I was like, the one you mentioned about her husband. And he was like, oh my God, honey, I am so happy to see you. How's your husband doing? Is he out of the hospital? Is he okay? And I'm like, he's standing right there. He's moving your furniture. He's putting away the chairs. And, you know, they say that sometimes they're whispering to you. They whisper and whisper and whisper. But sometimes it takes a shout for you to realize, you know, that this is really your life.
Yes. Yes. How's your relationship with your husband? You said the two of you listen to my show. I think that's very cute.
We do. And actually your show helps so much because, you know,
Thank
especially
you.
with all of these near-death experiences, and he doesn't know. And that's the first question every person has. What did you see? What did you see when you went over there? And, you know, he said, hopefully eventually it'll come back. But our relationship, I mean, is so amazing. I love this man so much. And when we go to his doctor's appointment, we have the same doctor for many years. And he was like, Court, it sounds like you guys are going on dates.
Oh, it's
You
so
really
sweet.
like each other.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, you know, when people get so angry and worked up in your relationship that you're like, I can imagine my life without this person. And I got to see what my life would be like without him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something I would ever want. I'm so grateful. And every night I'm telling him how grateful I am that we got a second chance.
You know, I was just talking to someone earlier today about grief and about severe pain, and it is an opportunity to really find your path, your spiritual path, and maybe not like what you're going to do, but who you are and what life's about and what's important.
Yes.
And nothing can crack open the shell quite like grief. The most painful thing can give us the greatest awakening to what's important.
Yeah. And actually, I just read a book about that. I read so many books, but in there, she had one quote that really stood out to me. And she said that religion is for those who are scared of hell, but spirituality is for those who have already been there.
Interesting. Yes. Can you say that
You
again
know,
one more
and
time?
yeah, she said religion is for people who are scared of hell, and spirituality are for people who have already been there.
Yeah, that's it.
And I never thought about it that way. And when I saw that, I had to write it down. I had to ingrain it into myself because
Yes.
I've been there. And now I believe in things that I never even imagined was possible. You know, that spirituality has carried me. And now when I'm lost, you know I can ask for guidance, you know, and for help, and it'll work out the way that it's supposed to.
Mm. Courtney, you sound so inspiring, and you are. But I know it's only been a short time. It hasn't even been a year yet, and only a few months with your husband. I can only assume there are good days and some not so good days.
Yeah.
And I'm sending you a huge hug right now from across the country and across the ocean to you. Do you have any
Well, thank
advice?
you.
You're welcome. Yeah, you've got me for the friend forever. Do you have any advice for someone who may be going through this right now? Loss of a child, or certainly I think it's clear that anyone who loses someone to suicide, they are definitely greeted by warm, loving arms in the afterlife, and being taken care of. But any advice, just you, to me, based on everything you say, you're tapped in spiritually. You're knowing things, and it'd be really interesting to see if how that opens up for you. But if you have another mother you're talking to right now, because you are, not me, but listeners right now, or father, what advice would you give for the good days, the not so good days, how to keep going forward?
I think one of the biggest things that helped me go forward, and I've continued to do this with others, is to reach out. And so the first week that my daughter passed away, a mother reached out to me that had lost her child. And it helped save me. And so now when I see other mothers that lost their children, I'm not afraid to reach out, and any comfort is great comfort. You take comfort in what you can get. And with suicide, I think the biggest thing is, we didn't publicly acknowledge her suicide until her birthday, until July. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people can make, families can make, because by not talking about it, it just makes it easier for the next person to do it.
Right.
And suicide is something that needs to be talked about. If I had talked about it in my home, who knows, maybe this wouldn't have happened to my child, but communication and talking about it not only helps your soul, dealing with the suicide of your own loved one, but it might help someone that is contemplating it or has gone through it with their loved ones. And a lot of people are scared to talk, and it's so
Yes.
important. The most important thing that I learned early on, and I'm so grateful that someone told me this, is to cry. It's so important to cry. The lady told me, just put on a sad movie and force yourself to cry if you have to. But your body, your spirit, and your soul really needs to cry. And so I would put on Caleb's slideshow and I would just cry my heart out. And afterwards, I could function for a little while. So you just fake it until you make it, and that's worked for me. I don't know if it works for everyone, but eventually that smile will come back without you even having to think about it.
Wow, that's good advice. And it's, we all want to avoid the pain. So we avoid looking at the pictures or the slideshows, or those reminders. But the only way to get to the other side of grief is to walk right through it.
Yeah, I think when you try to avoid it, it just makes that road a lot longer and harder than it has to be. And it's always going to be long and hard.
Yes.
But why make it longer and harder?
Yeah, they say what you resist persists. It'll show back up even if you try to push it away. But I've never heard that about crying. But I have heard that the chemical makeup of tears, of grieving tears, are different than regular tears. So it really
Wow.
is, a total. It's not as easy of just saying you can turn it off. It's something. It's chemical in our bodies, and when we love someone, the more we love, the more it hurts. It's.
Yeah, when she told me to put on the sad movie, I was like,
Are you
I don't
crazy?
need a sad movie. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't need a sad movie. They just come on their own. But it's really helped. I mean, and it's not just the little tears. I mean, it's like a full on ugly cry stop session. But you need to get it out. You need to get it out. You stifle it. It has to go somewhere.
Yeah, it
You
does.
know, the grief has to go somewhere, and why not let it out and absorb it?
Yeah, and then you're right. You can breathe for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
You can. Oh, what's the story with the eyes in the picture?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's
Okay,
right.
so with the
I've loved
eyes,
everything you've shared, so don't worry about it.
I started into my husband's story. The day after my husband was admitted into the hospital, so like 3 hours after he woke up, a lady contacted me through Facebook Messenger. She and I were friends, not really friends. We were acquaintances. Um, but she contacted me, and I knew instantly that my daughter had probably been around her. I could just feel it. So she was scared. She's messaging me, and she was like, "I don't know if you believe. I don't know how you feel about this stuff, but let me just show you." And she sent me these pictures, and it's Snapchat. And on her body is my daughter's eyes. There was 3 pictures and a video. And she was like, "Something is wrong with me. I've been feeling really weird this morning. How can I help you?" She had no idea he was in the hospital. She didn't know. She just felt weird. And I told her, "If you can, please come up to the hospital. We're in ICU." And very little hesitation, she came up. She brought a friend with her, and Caleb has been visiting her. So that morning, it was Monday morning, my daughter had been going to her over and over again and telling her, "Please help my dad." And the lady was like, "I don't know your dad. I can't help him." And she's like, "Please help my dad." And for my daughter just made 9 months that she's been gone yesterday. For the last 9 months, I've been collecting healers. Like all of these people, mediums or whatever you want to call them, have been contacting me and coming into my circle for some reason. And I didn't know why. And I truly believe that it was to help me deal with him, because they all showed up at the hospital, and any prayer is good prayer. And they were all there praying for him. I had strangers, people that I never met before, showing up and asking me if they can pray for him. And I honestly believe that that's probably what helped him come back to me, especially full force. But yeah, my daughter had been going to her and showing up in her pictures, and she said she was so persistent. And so a week after my husband came home, we were in her town, in that lady's town, and she had just so happened walked by, and she had to stop, and she was so overcome with emotion, hugging him and telling him how much his daughter loved him, how persistent she was, that she was always there. And it was what he needed to hear. He was so consumed that he forgets that the love is still there.
Yes.
And it was what he needed to hear, and it was so amazing. But she does that. She shows up in our Snapchat pictures and videos. I got voicemail from her.
What do you mean?
2 months after she passed away.
How did that?
Yeah,
Tell me.
I don't know. I don't know how it happened, but every night when I'm done work, I call my husband. This was in April, so my daughter passed in February. I call him when I'm walking to the car, and he didn't answer the phone. So I was like, "Oh, well, I'll just wait." He called me right back, but when I answered the phone, there was no one there. So I thought maybe he butt dialed me. So I didn't think anything of it. I started driving, and I called him once more, and he answered. And I was like, "Hey, babe," I was like, "Why did you call me? You didn't say anything." And he was like, "I didn't call you. I was in the shower." And I was like, "I just got a phone call from you." And he was like, "Whatever." So I figured it was a mistake. At the same time we're talking, my voicemail goes off. And I just disregarded it. He was like, "Why are you listening to music when you're talking to me on the phone?" I was like, "You sent me voicemail." He said, "I didn't call you. I was in the shower." I was like, no sense in arguing already. So I get home. It's already like 11 o'clock at night. And I started to have this immense pain through my body, all through my stomach and into my back. And I was sitting in the bathtub, and I was crying out to God. And I was like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with me? Why am I in so much pain?" By 4 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't take the pain anymore. I went to the emergency room, and they did scans, and I had a kidney stone.
Oh no.
Yeah, I thought I was dying. But so I go in the morning. I had a doctor's appointment to see my therapist, and I get in there, and he's like, "I have to go to the bathroom." I say, "Okay, whatever. I'll wait." As I'm waiting for him, I noticed that my voicemail was blinking. So I was like, "Okay, I'll just listen to it." It is 1 second long. 1 second. There's no way. I played it, and it's my daughter's voice very clearly. And she said, "What's wrong with you?" And so my therapist walks back in the room. I am white. I am like yelling at my telephone. I was like, "What in the world?" And he's like, "What?" I said, "My daughter left me a voicemail." He's like, "What daughter?" "Caleb." He's like, "How is that possible?" I was like, "You're the doctor. You need to tell me how this is possible." Because he's been going through the entire journey with me. So I think he's a believer for sure now.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did was I sent it off to all of her friends, all of my family. Maybe it's just my mind playing tricks on me. And they all confirmed that it
They
is her
heard it
voice.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it came from my husband's phone. The number was from his phone. And so I
While he was in the
interrogated him. I
shower,
played.
the phone dialed your number and left a
Yeah.
1 minute or 1 second message.
And it's very clear. Like very, very, I don't know how you can fit that message in 1 second. But it's very clear.
Oh, it's so great. It's going to be, well, first of all, are you writing all these things down?
I have been for the most part because I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with this. I know people keep telling me to share it.
You're going to write a book is what I think. At some point, there's something about your journey and what's possible. And when the time is right, I no doubt your daughter will help you.
And that's another thing too. People need to know that people come into your life for a reason. Mm-hmm. And I never believed that. And I truly believe also that our family members, in wherever they're at, they connect with each other and connect us to people that we need to meet.
Yeah. You felt a pretty strong feeling about coming on the show. So, I'm like, absolutely. Absolutely. And I can see why. I mean, these words are so important for so many reasons.
So, I would say it was crazy. Like every time I see my therapist, this is so crazy. The craziest thing happened. I dreamt I got a Jeep last week. I dreamt I got a Jeep, and I told my husband, "Babe, I don't know. I had the weirdest dream. I got a Jeep." And he was like, "That's crazy. You're not going to get a Jeep." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know where that came from." Sandra, 3 hours later, I'm driving on the freeway. A rock hits my windshield. It's broken. My car insurance needs to get me a rental, and they pull up with a white Jeep. Yep, true story.
Yeah. Keep writing them down, okay? Will you do that? Even if it's on your phone or computer or however. Because the time is going to come, I think, and I think your channel, whatever you want to call it, is just going to be stronger with your knowing, because I think it's all really opened up your intuition as well. And there'll be more and more. And I think the best gifts any of us can be is helping another human being. And your daughter and yourself and your husband, your family is doing just that. And so there'll be more things happening and more things to share. And I just know for me, you're opening up to a bunch of people right now what kind of things are possible. They are possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much more than we could ever imagine.
No, right. Right. And her will, your daughter's will, Caleb's will to be on earth. I mean, she is. She's doing the miraculous right now. And I think.
So when I feel her energy, I feel her energy constantly. And when my husband was in the hospital, I could feel his energy. And I'm by no means anyone that can feel energy. It's really strange for me. But when I felt her for so long, and I was like, "Caleb, why did you have to do this? You could have just jumped on a plane and slept on my couch." And now I just look at it as, thank you so much for visiting me, and thank you so much for letting me know that you're still here.
Mm-hmm. Right. Courtney, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me. It's so amazing that I'm even doing this.
Yeah, why not, right? You're doing all kinds of things. Why not? Yeah, it's not just you, it's your daughter as well.
Hmm.
And in our Facebook group, the We Don't Die listeners, someone had just posted something about wanting to hear more about suicide. And
Yeah.
are people judged um, and all that stuff. So I'm really excited to air this interview as well and be able to share from your perspective and your experiences. So it's a huge gift. It's a huge gift, and I know there is nothing more painful than grief. And I know it, but I'm on a different path than you are. But you're clearly on a path now, and just soak it up day by day, whatever happens. But I believe in my heart and soul that all the stories you're gathering are going to continue to make a difference, that your intuition or whatever that is that we call it is just going to continue to grow, and your relationship with your daughter and your husband. And how are your other girls doing?
They're doing better. They were just like me. They couldn't believe. They thought mom was crazy. They thought that they have to lock me up. But now that now that they've experienced so much, and seeing it for themselves, I think that they really embrace it. And when they get their own visitations now from their sister, they get dreams once in a while, and they are just blooming and blossoming whenever they get that. They're like running down to me, Mom, she came to visit me last night. And, I told them we just have to embrace,
Yes.
embrace what we have. You can't be upset with what we don't have. We embrace it, what we do have.
Yes. True.
And so they've been, you just have to take it every day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
One day.
Wisely said. And also for anyone right now, just don't take for granted that grief. Oh, how do I even say this? There's so many aspects of grief that are out of our control as human beings. Whether it's like we just spoke about on this show today, about having these moments that you don't even remember taking some actions, and your neurotransmitter levels are so depleted that whether it's loss of memory or strange behaviors or so many different things are impacted by grief. Even some of the thoughts that go through your head. I remember one guy sent me, actually this guy looked me straight in the eyes, who was going to end his own life. And in my grief audio, I describe what a grieving brain might say to you, like what thoughts you might have. He says, you spoke exactly the thoughts that were in my mind. And he said, had you not done that, he says, I would have thought that that was me. Now I know it was grief talking, and I chose not to kill myself. So we can't, our minds are so fragile, and our bodies and everything, but grief is nothing to play around with. It's consuming. It's horrible. And, and if you are someone experiencing really deep grief and deep pain, it does not hurt to see your physician and talk about it, because there are, there's, how do I say this? There's a level of grief that we all hit, but there's some people that hit an amazing, like they really lose a lot of their neurotransmitters and really get to a deep, deep, deep dark place, which I know a slight level of medications and things can help. So if you have any doubt, see a doctor. Any doubt.
Yeah.
Courtney, are you available to be friends with people if they find you on Facebook? Can they message you?
Yes.
Oh, that's so great. Great. Courtney Horn is all you need to type in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any closing words before we wrap up this episode?
Just remember, that love lives past death.
Yes, it does.
When we open ourselves up to it, they make themselves known.
Yeah. Well, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being our guest today.
Thank
Really,
you.
thank you. And for our listener, thank you for spending this hour with Courtney Horn and I. And I had mentioned that How to Survive Grief audio. If you want a free copy of that, just go to we don't die radio.com and it's there for you. Also, well, so many things there. All these past episodes are there. You can join our Facebook group, which is We Don't Die Listeners. It's a great place for grief support and talk of the afterlife and signs. That afterlife symposium, you may have heard me talk about that. Courtney, that'd be great if you could come to that this year in
I
Scottsdale.
know. I was planning on it this year, and it had all this turbulence.
Well, 2018, the dates are here, September
Yes,
14th through 16th. And it would just, you'd meet some great people. Well, anyone will who goes there. But the website for that is afterlifesymposium.org. I'm sure we'll meet face to face at some point, whether it's there or somewhere else. But I support you and will continue to share your signs and things like that. And to your husband and to Caleb and your other daughters, just a real warm thank you. And again, listener, right now, you who's listening, thank you for being here. So in closing, my name's Sandra Champlain, and I am so honored that I get to be your host and share amazing people with you on We Don't Die Radio. And I do believe that life is an education for the soul and that your life here on earth is important. And if you get nothing else from this episode, love never dies. Never. And your loved ones are around you. So I want to thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.